You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the July 22nd, 2022 meeting of the LaPorte County Election Board. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
All right, good afternoon. This is the meeting of the LaPorte County Election Board. It is July 22nd. I'll call the meeting to order now. If we could stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Start with roll call. Chuck Watterson, President. Here. Nelson Pichardo, Vice President.
Present.
Heather Stevens, Secretary and Clerk.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. They're all present. To start with old business, we'll go with the meeting minutes of May 13th, 2022. I've had a chance to read and review them. Have you all had a chance?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
I'd move that we accept the meeting minutes from May 13th, 2022.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Those meeting minutes are approved. Before we get into new business, we'll open the floor up to public comment. If anyone has a public comment, now is the time.
Kevin, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Kevin Harmon, 421 East 6th Street, Michigan City. I'm planning on being an inspector at the MC13 location at the Southwind Emmanuel Church. And I'm just hoping that things will go better this time. When I got there after picking the equipment on that Saturday, I went by the church, and for some reason they weren't notified, and I couldn't figure out why that was the case. And I called Miss Stevens on that, and she indicated that they contacted everybody in March. So whether that happened, who called who, what was confirmed, I have no idea. But I assured them that it wouldn't happen this fall, that they were going to be properly notified in time, because they were very reluctant to even use their facility. They just remember me for working there in 2020, and I patronized their fundraising dinners and whatnot, so they allowed it to happen. But with all that stuff that went on and not being able to get in to set up like I wanted to early, it caused a lot of things that Monday morning only had that 1 hour to get going. And not being familiar with all the new equipment, the new procedures, and then you had to come out here to help us out. When you guys called me about the hotspot gadget, I had no idea what you were talking about, So I'm just thinking that probably it'd be a good idea to have like illustrated instructions as far as how to set things up, for those people that maybe aren't too familiar with things, that would help out. Another thing, which is the biggest headache, is returning the equipment to the courthouse. And, you got to have the Democratic person and the Republican person coming together. And more times than not, we're coming in separate cars. So what I've always done, I would have the one person bring in the blue bag and the carry-in stuff, and the other person would just go through the drive-through to drop off the machines, park, and then join the person in line so we can expedite things, That's worked out well in the past. The thing is, I was not familiar with the fact that we got that, we call that blue box, the verification box or whatever. I'm thinking that had to, along with the machines, could have been dropped off at the curb, but I had to carry that thing in, and I wasn't expecting that. So I think when we have our training, I think it'd be a good idea to instruct the people, like, okay, when you return stuff back, this is what is carried in, this is what gets dropped off at the curb, so people would know. So other than that, I'm just hoping that things go a little well, and also it's always been a thing of mine of why it takes so long to get our checks. Why does it take 5 weeks? Okay, because when Lynn Speedback was clerk, and I've been doing this for 11 years, so I've been here for a while. We always got our checks, well, more times than that, we got our checks in May, by Memorial Day weekend, in November by Thanksgiving. And I can't understand why we can't have that happen again.
I'll speak to that if you want me to, Kevin.
Go ahead.
This was my first time, and it falls on me. This was also the first time for the new lady who is now on the payroll end of paying everybody. It was also the first time that they were taxing the county employees. So it was a whole lot of new, and we're just gonna do better. We're just gonna keep getting better. Now we know what to expect, so we'll do better.
And also the contact information, you give us those sheets to contact our people. And they had my phone number from a landline I had like 11 years ago. I don't know how you guys keep up your records. So we sign enough documents for things to get updated. So that might be looked into as well.
So as you know, you are appointed as into your positions by the two precinct chairmen, by the chairman of the parties. So we only get the information that they give us. So make sure that they have your correct information, and maybe go ahead and, I know you deal with Gail quite a bit, make sure she has the updated information as well. Okay. And if you've updated with us, I'm sure Taylor handled that. Okay.
Last thing is, because I work with Alco TV, we do our election summary, and it's incumbent that I be here, as soon as I get my equipment turned in. And I brought this to your attention before, and you allowed me to get in front of the line, and that worked out okay. But just keep that in mind too. See, the thing is, there's so many people in that little narrow line, and it's just a hassle trying to work my way through those folks. So anyway, we'll see what happens this fall. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Any more public comments?
I'll let you go first. But good afternoon. My name is Ron Miller. I'm the manager at WEFM Radio, 1903 Springland Avenue. And I wasn't going to come until I heard some comments about that was made about the decision that was made at the last minute on primary election day. Just for reference purposes, I moved to Michigan City from Michigan in December of 1981, so I've lived in Michigan City for a little over 40 years. During that time, I don't think I've missed voting in an election. And for the vast majority of that time, maybe all of them, I have worked as a news reporter for those elections. So I have a little bit of background in what's going on in LaPorte County. I've been a fan of this board for a while because I think you've worked really hard to try to make election opportunities available and build up the image of elections in LaPorte County. And unfortunately, I think your last-minute decision on primary election day may have set some of that back, and that's unfortunate. And unfortunately, I think the follow-up statement that we stand by our decision, I think, made it worse. The perception, and you said, Mr. Watterson, that you got some emails that surprised you about, or some social media, I should say, about what happened on that night. There are people out there that are looking for things like that, but there are people that felt that your decision was an indictment, if you will, of the clerk's office and the current clerk, because you didn't think she could handle the job, and so you had to step in at the last minute. And I know that wasn't the case, but you worked so hard to do what you did, and I think May 3rd was a setback, unfortunately. I know you were concerned about the incident that happened, but it happened 18 months previously. I think the clerk and the clerk's office demonstrated on election night that they had plenty of time to take care of that, and they did. I can tell you in 40 years, the only elections that I remember that had a problem, there was one where there was a computer problem, and we were told that we would get the results the next morning, which we did. There was a second we were told the same thing, but less than 10 minutes later the final results were released. And the third one was a number of years ago when an elderly woman who was in charge of one of the precincts, as soon as the elections were over at 6 p.m., she took the ballot box and locked it in the trunk of her car, drove home after a long day, turned off her phone and went to bed. And so as we were reporting the election results, there was one precinct that still wasn't in. It took about 2 hours before it was realized that somebody was going to have to go. A deputy sheriff had to be dispatched to wake her up and send her back and bring the information back. And we got the final results. So it's unfortunate that you didn't know what was going on that day. I heard your statement, before the county commission and the county council. All you had to do is talk to the clerk. Her husband hired a hall for people that night. Mr. Pichardo, you have people in your law firm that have tended those things for years. If you didn't know what went on election night, you should have known. And as I said, we all make mistakes. A few weeks ago, I wrote a news story. After the news story ended, somebody told me that the event that I promoted on Saturday was going to be a week from Saturday. So I immediately went on the air and I corrected it. I still remember a situation a number of years ago where I did a story about a state trooper that stopped a car in LaPorte County and arrested the driver. After the news story aired, the phone rang. It was that state trooper. He said, unfortunately, you listed my name as the person arrested and the person arrested as the state trooper. So needless to say, I had to correct that one as well. I know that I've been talking to the clerk that getting partial results is a problem. I go back to the days when we reported precinct by precinct, and we reported not only the results, but also how many people voted, how many people were registered in each precinct, and I think that helped to get people orientated to the election process. I understand that you can't do some of those things with the computer systems there are now, but she did tell me that if they stopped the process for any reason to do partial results, that there would be a delay of maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and I understand that. But I also understand that the precincts closest to LaPorte come in first. The ones in Michigan City and south of 30 come in later. So I would think there'd be somewhat of a natural gap there, and maybe that's time to do partial results. But if you decide you're not going to do partial results, you need to let people know so that they don't spend money on halls and food and alcohol and lots of other things. And let us know, because I sat up there for 3 hours talking with Drew White from Alco from 6:30 until about quarter to 10 when we finally got the results. The final thing I'll mention, and I mentioned this to Clerk Stevens at the fair, I didn't vote, nobody voted last year, there was no election. Year before, my wife was in poor health, she passed away in January, so we took written ballots and we mailed them in, so I hadn't voted in person for a couple of years. But the day before the election, I assumed that I was going to vote where I voted for many years, and that's at Sinai Temple in Michigan City. Well, Sinai Temple is no longer a voting place, and had I not found out, I don't even remember how I found out accidentally, I would have gone to Sinai Temple about 2 o'clock on election afternoon. Nobody would have been there, and I wouldn't have known where to go. I went to the newspaper, the Herald Dispatch, the Saturday before, because I wanted to check on precincts. And what I saw, and again, Ms. Stevens told me this has been procedure for a long time, and I understand that. They don't say, I've lived in the 5th Ward, 3rd Precinct for 40 years. They don't say that. They say MC 13. They say MC 2. They say LaPorte 27. Maybe younger voters, maybe that means something. It doesn't mean squat to me. I couldn't tell you which one I live in. But if I want to look up where I vote, doesn't do me any good to look at that list, because I don't know what MC 13 means or LaPorte 27. So I don't know why it was changed. It may have been done for very good reasons. I don't know if it can be changed back. But I think people, I like to know what people in my neighborhood are doing. Are large numbers of people in my neighborhood turning out to vote? Are they not voting? And so there's some value in that. But there are ways, I think, sometimes to do a better job of letting people know this information. And the MC 13 or the LaPorte 27 means absolutely nothing to me, and I've been doing this for 40 years. So for whatever that's worth. But I appreciate you listening to me. And whatever decision you make, I hope you'll make it early this time, and so I don't have to sit up there and talk for 3 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, I would like to respond to one thing very quickly. As far as the precinct names go, those were changed years ago.
I know that.
And as far as the polling locations, anytime there's a change in your polling location, you get a card from voter registration that states that. So they sent them, because I was in there at the time, and we did send them when Sinai Temple was no longer going to be a polling location.
Okay.
But I know that things get lost in the mail, and if you ever have an issue, just call the ladies in voter registration or call me.
Well,
Then we'll help you.
my only concern was I would have found out at 2 o'clock on election day, and what do I do then? So, and I may have been the only one that was in that situation, but if it happened to me, maybe it happened to somebody else. So that's why I thought I would bring it to your attention.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Jeez.
I call it living, Rich.
I know. I do too. Good afternoon.
Rich Mrozinski, 2303 East, 150 North, LaPorte. LaPorte County Commissioner, also sat on the Fair Board. First, I'd like to ask, for voter registration, how many people did we register at the fair this year? If you can,
I registered over 50.
wow, that
Every
many.
couple of side. Can't hear that.
So it sounds like roughly 70. Is that what I just heard?
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. I knew it was worthwhile. I knew people look forward to doing
Absolutely.
that. We did have a little incident out there that I think I have a solution for. I'm in the business of finding solutions for childish issues. When the fashion police from one place went down to see what the other people were wearing, on one hand, they are paid by the county, so they should adhere. Voter registration should adhere to the county handbook. On the other hand, if you are appointed by your party, you're in the building owned by your party, I don't see the big deal in it. But, being what it is, we got that van that's just sitting, taking up space. I think that for next year's fair, you need to take the van out there, register here. You have both sides, the Democrats and Republicans both in there, Libertarians too, I guess they can do that. It doesn't matter because you just register to vote. But that, I think, would be a good idea. Number one, use the van instead of just sitting there. Number two, you have both parties in the same spot. You can keep an eye on each other, see what each other's wearing if you want. But, and to register to vote. I don't know how many people think about that when they walk to the fair about, oh, I can go in here and register to vote. But if you got the van there with the sign, register here, I think it would be a good hit and utilize the van. And for the ladies who are sitting out there when it's smoking ass hot, you can get in the air-conditioned van and I think it'd be a little more comfortable. So that's my suggestion. Next year, let's use the van.
Would the commissioners help us to find a location out there for the van?
I'm on the fair board. I can do that. And I will take that up with the fair. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good afternoon, Joe Haney, 2695 West Joliet Road, and LaPorte County Commissioner. Commissioner Mrozinski brought up an interesting point here, and I've had some questions from the public about exactly what to do with the issue relating to a member of voter registration wearing a campaign T-shirt for a candidate who was running for office while on the clock, while working for the county. Usually these, page 49 of our employee policy and procedure manual is very clear. You cannot be campaigning, engaged in political activities, supporting political candidates while working. So that's on the county side. The issue that I have though is for the people who want to see this employee disciplined, according to the reports that come from the employee, they showed up with a nonpartisan shirt to register people to vote, and then they were ordered by Sheila Matias to change shirts and put on a Sheila Matias for commissioner shirt. This isn't just an issue of a employee violating employee policy. This is an issue of a department head, commissioner, and candidate ordering a county employee to change shirts and put on their campaign shirt. So I've had a hard time trying to just juxtapose these two situations. Do we discipline an employee for violating policy when they were told to do so by a superior? I don't know that it's right to take it out on the employee when it was a superior who told them to do that. So that's one issue that we've got to deal with. The other would be, and I've had these questions and I don't know, is it appropriate to file a complaint with the election board as far as a candidate ordering a county employee to wear a campaign T-shirt for that candidate?
That's not what happened, Joe.
We're just address the election board, please. I don't have the answer to that question.
Sure.
It'd be something we'd have to research, but certainly something we'll look into. But yeah, I don't have anything for you right now.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
For sure. Any other public comment? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this is Vidya Kora on Zoom. Can I comment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, let me begin by thanking all of you for serving on the board. I know it's a tough job, and I appreciate what you do. And I also want to echo Commissioner Mrozinski's suggestion about using the van. I think it's a great resource that we got for the county, and so I think we should utilize that. I think that would be, and also to be comfortable. Regarding wearing t-shirts and stuff like that, I think we can all agree that when we are in our respective booths, everybody in the past has done it. But moving forward, if somebody wants to do something different, both of us, both the chairman, we can come together and come to a consensus. I have no problem with that. And lastly, I feel this is a suggestion for the clerk that I think one of the things that Ron Miller brought up was about the changing the numbers from 5-2 to Michigan City 13 or 14, and some people are still used to the old numbering. So is it possible that when we put down Michigan City 13, 14, or LaPorte 26, 27, next to it in brackets, we can put down the older terminology, if at all possible. That way it'll help them. Yeah.
I mean, I could certainly create kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, that would show, but as far as any reports that come out or anything, they would not have that on there. Again, that was a change that was made well before my time.
And that cheat sheet, maybe it could be on the county website. And I think that might help. I think we should do whatever it takes to make it easy for the voters to find where they need to go and vote. And that's all I had. And thanks again for all you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yep. Did you have something?
My name is Gail Keynes, 161 Boyd Circle, Michigan City, Indiana. I work in voter registration. I was at voter registration. I told Sheila I liked her shirt. She gave me one. I put it on. I didn't think about the ramifications of that. She did not force me to wear it. She gave me one. She said, "Here, you can wear this." And I did. And then when I found out that I was not supposed to be wearing it, or what I forgot that I'm not supposed to be wearing a t-shirt that has one person on it. So I took it off, and then I put on my other one, and that was the end of it.
Okay.
I wasn't forced to do anything.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Anybody on Zoom? Rodney, you got your hand up? Okay.
Rodney McCormick, 617 Union Street. I was going to just comment on the Emmanuel Lutheran Church that we're using for the to have voting over in the 6th Ward. Diane Gonzalez, myself, and Stacy Benning played a big role in getting voting there, and to find out that it's a likelihood that they might not want us to come back because of communication problems. It's sad. Then I started hearing what Mr. Miller said, and I agree with him 100%. I was over at the Civic Center waiting on the results with the Republican at the Republican function, and it ended up being 10 o'clock. We haven't heard nothing. Seem like the changes that are being made is bad decisions, and they need to be reached. Something needs to be done about it. But then, finally, you hear about what happened at the fairgrounds as far as county employees wearing candidates' shirts while registering people to vote. Sadly and unfortunately, I've been picked on by this county for quite a while when it comes to elections. Matter of fact, I was kicked off this Zoom link at this very meeting and another county commissioners meeting because I wore a John Lake shirt. It seems like this is a little Hatch Act violation. I'm not for sure. I'm not a lawyer. But there needs to be consequences when people do this, have this kind of behavior. I don't think that was a mistake. that what was done, but there needs to be consequences. If it was me, you probably would have had the sheriff try to remove me or take me to jail. But it would have been some consequences. But it seems like when the white candidates are my counterparts, they do things, it's a slap on the wrist and nothing's being done. Something has to change in our county. Something has to change. We cannot continue to let the bad behavior go on without nothing being done about it. And last, I just want to thank KP for inviting me into the Libertarian Party. Sadly, I feel that as a black man, I'm not wanted in the Democratic Party, LaPorte County Democratic Party. And as a black man, I'm not welcome in the Republican Party of LaPorte County. So I decided that I'm going to be a libertarian. I'm welcome. It's not a handicap to be black. I just want to thank KP for allowing me to be who I am and allowing me to be a candidate. And everyone out here that's listening to this, Board of Elections, Dr. Cora, Sheila, Rich Brzezinski, Ron Miller, things will only improve in our county if we can bridge the communication gap that's plaguing us. Quit looking at race, quit looking at gender. Let's get down to business and do the bidding of the citizens of this county. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Any other public comment from anyone here or on Zoom? Last chance. Anyone? All right, public comment is closed. We will move on to the only order of new business that we have, which would be a challenge was filed with a CAN1 form for a Scott Bell based on his not filing of his candidate petition. I'm going to read his letter into the record because he's not here as far as I can tell. So we'll read the letter that he sent to the election board onto the record. This was dated July 6th, 2022. Please accept this letter as my request to have my case forwarded to the LaPorte County Election Board for review. Specifically, I request the board allow my name to be placed on the ballot for the November 8th, 2022 general election as an independent candidate for Michigan Township Assessor. As required on June 30th, 2022, before noon, I turned in my CAN21 form, which provided 178 valid and verified signatures. Also, as required, I surpassed 2% of the total votes cast in Michigan Township for the office of Indiana Secretary of State in the 2018 general election. As you know, each of the CAN21 forms require the carrier's signature, printed name, date of birth, and the date signed by the carrier. My forms all comply with this step. The last line of the CAN21 asks for the carrier's full address, including zip code. This line was inadvertently overlooked on my CAN21s. However, each carrier did sign the petition at some point, so the address of each carrier is on a CAN21. I do not feel that because of a technicality, a potential candidate should be withheld from the democratic process of an election. I would also like the board to consider that in the spring of 2022, a person turned in names to appear on the ballot after the due date and time. To my understanding, those names came before the board and were approved. I feel strongly that having my signatures turned in on time but missing the carrier's address outweighs any candidate or candidates who turn in their forms late. If a precedent was set to accept late filings, I feel that I should be allowed to add the addresses to my forms that met all other requirements, most importantly being turned in on time. Lastly, I respectfully ask that the election board approve my candidacy as an independent candidate on the ballot of November 8th, 2022 general election. Let the process carry through and allow the voting public to support and vote for the candidate of their choice. Signed, most gracefully, Scott Bell. So, Heather, would you like to explain
Yes.
what's going on here, and
Yes.
then we'll talk about it from there?
I want to start with in the spring, before the primary, those filings were not turned in late. They were sitting in voter registration because that's where I sent them, because that's the way things had always been done. Come to find out, they did not have to go to voter registration. Those were there in a timely manner. They were brought in by Mr. McCormick. I, at that time, would not stamp them. I said, nope, they're late, it's over. After talking with Mr. McCormick, I went inside, I called downstate, I went into my office, I called downstate, I asked him not to leave the building. So he had them in his hand, he did not leave the building, nothing changed. I spoke with Brad King downstate. He explained to me that those filings never had to go to voter registration to be checked, as we've always done. That's gone. We don't do that anymore. You come in, you file them. If the two-party chairmen want to then you ask questions of their vote history, that's on them, and they can challenge. So he had them to me in time. Again, this was on me. So I came to the election board. I explained the situation. We voted, and I was to then accept the filings. So that's the difference. Mr. Bell has never filed the filing paperwork with me. He's never attempted. All that's been handed in is this petition.
And that petition on the bottom, where there's an affidavit that's required by Indiana statute, the affidavit needs to be filled out with signature, name, date of birth, and then signed with the date, obviously.
Yes.
And then underneath, there's a carrier's full address, including the zip code that has to be filled out, correct?
Correct.
And on Mr. Bell's petition, none of these were filled out as for the address, zip code, on any of the petitions.
Correct. He missed it on every single page. It was actually, he had brought these in the last day that he could. The deadline was noon. I believe he came in around 11:30. He turned these into voter registration, and it was when they started to try to enter the petition that the ladies in voter registration came to me. They showed me the paperwork. They showed me the rules, the how-to, and it clearly states, there's even a picture of it, that portion must be filled out. So they asked my opinion, I gave it, and I said, call downstate to be sure.
And then with the call downstate, I talked to the Secretary of State as well, with Brad King and Angie. I can't pronounce her last name.
Nussmeier.
Now I can. And spoke to them and confirmed that the statute I was reading, because that's what I do for a living, is read statutes, and the statute contains the phrase must include the carrier's full address, including zip code. Now there is a portion underneath that can be corrected up until the last date and hour that the deadline is due. The problem is they were turned in at 11:30. Voter registration realized the mistake. It was past the last date and hour. And that information must be included on the petition. It wasn't. The proper process was to file a CAN1, which is a challenge with the election board. So that's why we're here today. That was filed properly. So now it's up to us to enforce the statutes and make a decision whether or not he can be allowed on the ballot. And ultimately, he never filed to be on the ballot, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just the petition was. So, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I think that's my biggest concern is the fact that he never actually even filed it. Right, that's a problem. I mean, it's one thing to file it and then correct or perfect the issue that was missed, but it wasn't even filed.
Right.
So that I have some reservations on allowing that if it wasn't ever actually even filed. I read the statute the same as you, Chuck. It does say the petition carrier must include that information, and I think we're kind of in a tight spot here when we don't have very much leeway when it comes to the statute that rules on this matter. So,
And that's what I gathered from talking with the Secretary of State as well, is that there is no. Sure, the process is you file the CAN1 to come before the election board, but there's nothing that we can do as far as our purview if they didn't follow the statute and didn't file to be a candidate in the first place. So I think we need to open this up for a vote.
well, hold on, and then I just had a couple more comments.
Sure.
And then the comments that Ms. Stevens was making at the beginning, I think we're addressing his letter. Is that right? He cited some incident back in 2022 where
Correct.
Correct.
he believes that this was given an exception. Is that right?
Yes.
Correct.
But what you're saying is that that's not the case.
It was a
That
completely different issue. It was completely different.
Right. So I just want to make that very clear. There wasn't an exception made for someone, and then we're deciding it differently for this person. I just want to make that, known. Is that my understanding that issue that you were addressing wasn't in fact someone accepting and being put on the ballot after the time factor?
Right. The difference is that in the primary, it was my error.
Right.
And if it's an error on me, I can't keep somebody off the ballot. We had to give them the opportunity.
It was a process error as opposed
Yes.
to the candidate doing what they're supposed to do. And
Right.
in that case, it was the opposite. Is that all your comments on this issue?
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe so. Thank you.
So, I would move to get a vote on whether or not Mr. Bell should be included on the candidate list for the general election in 2022. That's my motion. Second, anyone?
Second.
All right, I have a second. We have a motion and a second, so I guess all in favor of, well, I guess it would be not allowing.
Right.
Scott Bell, yeah.
Can you clarify?
I would
your
amend the motion. The motion is, I would move to not allow
Okay.
Scott Bell on the 2022 general election, according to the Indiana statute. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Seconded. Motion and a second, so all in favor of not allowing Scott Bell on the 2022 general election, say aye.
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 Obviously, there's no nays, so 3-0, it passes. Mr. Bell will not be allowed on the 2022 ballot due to the reason stated, failing to file, and secondly, not following the statute as far as the petition goes to include all the information necessary by Indiana statute. That's it for new business. We can go on to board member comments. We'll start with Heather, if you have any.
I know that clearly, first election in the primary for me, a lot of new equipment, a lot of firsts. So I know that it wasn't as great as it can be, and we're just going to continue to improve. So bear with me.
Nelson?
Yeah, I appreciate the comments that you all made. Thank you for bringing those things to our attention. It's something that we try to get better at, right? There's always something that's a little bit different, and I appreciate that things have been done a certain way for many years, but things change, and I was the only member that was a part of this board whenever the huge issue happened back when we had to correct a lot of the voting totals, and that was something that we did not want to happen again. So maybe we were a little overcautious, in the way we made our decisions this last time. But quite frankly, and it's something that we continue to talk about as to how to make things better and still have a safe election and make sure that the results are accurate and given in a timely manner. But there are some procedural hurdles that are oftentimes out of our control. And one of those things is our third party vendor, Microvote. We got one guy in there, helping us total this stuff. If he stops his count, the whole operation stops, because he's the only one that can do that. And that might be something that's different from what people are used to. Before, we had other experienced members that were in that room that could kind of keep the process going. We didn't have that option this last time. And so, again, as we made our comments back closer in time when it happened, we were wanting to make sure that the totals that were given were accurate, that there weren't any issues with it. And one of the things that I think that we can look at to the fall is the early voting and the voting that we received, prior to the actual election day. Those are totals that we can have ready, and those are numbers that we could give out in advance. So at least there is some partial. It might be only like, I think this last election it was only like 3% or something like that, right? Am I accurate?
Yeah,
well, I know it was less than 5%. Obviously, there's a lot of things that happen on election day, but that's at least a partial. But one of the things that if we're going to release numbers in batches or early, we're going to have to come up with a solution as to how to keep the process going and not allow Microvote to stop their process. Because if we keep stopping and we give batch, you're not going to get the end result till like 1 a.m. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, where's the balance here? All right. And so again, as Chuck and I have said from the very beginning, we totally conceded the fact that yes, that was a complete oversight. We should have let everyone know, the public know, that that was our decision. We just didn't do that, and I concede to that. You know, I apologize for that, and I think that is something that we could have done better. But as an actual decision and how to go about it, I don't know that we could have, you know, done much better, quite frankly, with what we were given. As far as the machines and some of those issues with the places, again, you know, when we have a new clerk, I think that there is some change over there that, quite frankly, some things are going to kind of sneak by. When you have so many locations and you're dealing with so many people to communicate, Heather is pretty much the only one that handles that. And so, you know, given the amount of places that we use, it's going to happen. And again, I'm thankful that, you know, people for the most part are very understanding and sympathetic. But like I said, we will continue to get better. We'll work on it, and we'll discuss and we'll take into consideration everything that you guys have said. It's not like it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. We're really trying to, you know, make sure that these elections are done in a manner that are efficient, safe, and in a way that it pleases the people that are voting, right? That's the whole goal. And if folks lose confidence in the process that we're overseeing, then that's a problem, and that's what we don't want to happen. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as the results, I've spoken about that ad nauseum, so I'll pass on that. To go into some of the public comments, the better labels on precincts with the numbers. Yeah, it is confusing. A cheat sheet will help, but also so will vote centers if that materializes in the next year or so. That way we don't have to worry about precincts as far as, you know, knowing which one you have to go to. You go to one. So hopefully that's going to be resolved. That's going to be way more efficient for everything. It's a process, but we're on it. We're definitely looking at it because it's something I think has to happen. Especially with how early voting and the turnout's been with that lately in the last few elections. It's very nice to be able to just stop in at a center and cast your vote. As far as the van, we need to better utilize that. You know, as long as we can keep the battery charged and, you know, people aren't leaving stuff on. That's my personal donation to the county with some jumper cables recently. And then as far as the issue with the fashion stuff, that's out of my purview right now. I'm going to look into obviously the issues because obviously it's bothered quite a few people. But again, I don't think that's, when it comes to disciplining people, that's not in our purview. You know, we are on the county election board. We don't work for the county. But it's certainly an issue that can be addressed, but not without proper research or, you know, we don't want to speak off our cuff on that incident. But ultimately what it comes down to is our voters are out there registering at the fair. We've got people working out there to get people registered. And other than that, I mean, everything's been going pretty smooth. So I look forward to, you know, our 24-hour shift on election day and getting results out sooner and more efficient. There definitely does need to be a way, and I understand what Kevin was saying about the line, and we're doing exactly what we can with that little room that we're in. I mean, in a year when we have all those new printers that are going to come in, that room is simply not going to suffice. We're going to have either a standalone building somewhere that can, you know, maybe even there's a drive-through window or something. But something we're gonna need a new building or room we're simply not gonna be able to fit in there with those new printers. We can't fit in there now, but we make it happen. So hopefully that'll get all addressed in the next year or so once those machines start coming down the line. But thank you everyone for your public comment, and thanks to everyone that's, you know, making this happen. So at that, meeting is adjourned.